Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees. Our top stories tonight. Chaos as Kabul airport is hit by at least 2 explosions. Civilians and US service members were among the casualties. Afghan families in the UK fear for their relatives back home. Some have booked flights to Afghanistan to fetch their family members. And Turkey says it may help the Taliban run Kabul airport after the full withdrawal of all NATO forces. At least 2 explosions took place near Kabul's airport today, where a chaotic evacuation effort was ongoing. The Pentagon says civilians and US service members were among the casualties. NTD's Eddie Aiken has the details.
The US government confirms that 2 suicide bombers targeted crowds near Kabul airport, causing an unknown number of casualties. A Pentagon spokesman says one blast occurred near an airport gate, the other close to the nearby Baran Hotel. Russian officials say at least 13 people were killed in the attacks and 15 wounded. US officials say at least one of the explosions appeared to be from a suicide bombing. The UK's Ministry of Defence says there have been no reported UK military or UK government casualties, and UK forces are working closely with our partners to provide security and medical assistance. US officials strongly believe the attacks were carried out by ISIS-K, an offshoot of the ISIS terrorist group. The attacks came after the United States and its allies urged people to leave the area because of terrorist threat. Hours before the incident, Britain's Armed Forces Minister James Heappey says there was credible intelligence about an ISIS attack.
Intelligence over the course of the week has become ever more certain around the highly credible, imminent, lethal attack onto the airport or the handling centres being used by Western forces.
Thousands of Afghans remained at the airport, hoping to be airlifted to safety. The Prime Minister acknowledged the time left is very limited, but he says the UK has evacuated the vast majority of those eligible.
Thank you very much. We've got the overwhelming majority of those to whom we owe that debt out of Afghanistan as I stand and talk to you now. In the time we have left, which may be, as I'm sure everybody can appreciate, quite short, we'll do everything we can to get everybody else.
Following the terror attacks, planes continued to take off from the airport. The UK government says it will use every hour left to maximise the number of people evacuated. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
As news about Afghanistan dominates the headlines, Afghans living in Britain fear for their family's safety. Some have booked flights to Afghanistan to bring their family members to the UK. NTD's General brings us this report.
As a community leader for Afghans in London, Callum Shillin has been receiving calls from families worried about their relatives in Afghanistan.
In the middle of the night, my phone is ringing and they're saying, is anything there is that we can call our family? Or even people start traveling from here to Afghanistan to take their family out. Yesterday, a couple of people, they flown to Afghanistan to bring their family back. Everybody has a connection, very close connection. Their parents, their brothers, their sisters, including myself.
Up the road, a restaurant worker from Afghanistan says his son, who's a GP, and his daughter, who's a heart surgeon, walked for hours from Afghanistan to Pakistan.
16 hours they walk. In border in Pakistan and Afghanistan, 16 hours they will walk. I'm 2 weeks, I didn't sleep, nothing. All time thinking. I'm thinking what situation they will come.
Some Afghans who've arrived more recently in the UK are temporarily staying in hotels in the north of England. He's in limbo, he says, waiting to hear about the support he can receive after arriving here. Shirin says people are worried about what the Taliban will do now it has regained power.
This is the beginning of their regime. Maybe they want to establish themselves. Maybe they found friends across the world first. Maybe they put people calms within the country first. And then when they are become stronger and stronger within the country, they're going to bring their ideologically issues back to be enforced over the people. That's the worry of the people, and that's the people cannot trust the Taliban. Within the city, when they're interviewing the Taliban, the first question they're asking, whether you're going to enforce on us to grown beer or to wear turban. This is the first question, because that's what they did, or women to wear burqa. So this is the first issue people even asking right now, and they have no answer to that. And they said, we have to wait for our elders to decide what is going to be the next step.
Amid the uncertainty and a looming deadline, evacuations are still underway. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
NATO forces have begun withdrawing from Afghanistan, but Turkish civilian experts could remain in the country to help the Taliban run Kabul airport, possibly keeping an open way out. NTD's Trevor Piper has more.
Turkey said on Wednesday it may provide technical support to the Taliban in operating Kabul airport after the full withdrawal of all NATO forces. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's spokesman said talks were heading in a positive direction.
If there is an agreement on the conditions, we will continue to provide this service. This will be a professional service to run the airport. But if you consider Kabul airport as the door that opens Afghanistan to the world, the importance of this mission will be automatically understood.
The Taliban insist that Ankara's military also withdraws fully by the 31st of August deadline. Turkey was part of a NATO mission in Afghanistan, and it has also been involved in evacuation efforts. Ankara has praised what it described as moderate statements by the Taliban and says it is open to engaging with them once a new government is formed. Experts say keeping the airport open after foreign forces hand over control is vital to maintain aid supplies and operations. The Taliban have said they'll allow Afghans to leave via commercial flights after the deadline, but it remains unclear which airlines would return to the airport. Ankara said a final decision would be made by the 31st of August. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
A look now at the Taliban, which makes most of its money from criminal activities like extortion and kidnapping for ransom. That's according to a UN report. It says drug trafficking is their primary source of income, opium in particular. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us the details.
The United Nations says the Taliban relies on drug trafficking to make money. Opium is a guaranteed source of funding for them.
The
UN estimates Afghanistan is responsible for 80% of the world's opium and heroin. One UN estimate suggests the Taliban made £335 million from poppy crop yields in 2020.
There's different Taliban factions, and the different factions engage in the drug trade in different ways. In most areas, the Taliban will collect tax off of poppy that is grown. They will also tax the drug labs that are operating.
Gretchen Peters is the author of Seeds of Terror: How Drugs, Thugs and Crime Are Reshaping the Afghan War. She says there is evidence the Taliban are exporting drugs further outside Afghanistan. Whereas 10 years ago, all trading took place inside Afghanistan and Pakistan. And it's likely to get worse.
The Taliban now has institutions of the state that it can use to support its drug trafficking activities, whether it's road runways, airplanes, customs records, banks. This is going to make it a lot easier for the Taliban to move drugs.
The UN estimates the country produced up to 7,000 tons of opium in 2020, with all regions seeing an increase except one. Experts believe production will increase more now, especially because they have limited financing alternatives. Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
Our final story on Afghanistan tonight. a Pulitzer Prize-winning Afghani photojournalist, is warning that the Taliban will commit atrocities. He said they have not changed, despite their assurances. NTD's Trevor Piper has more on this.
Afghani photojournalist Masood Husseini got on the last commercial flight to Istanbul the day Kabul fell.
So I kind of really scared because, Taliban can find me easily, right? And they would kill me by probably torturing me. That's something that I know because they are not human, I think. They look like human, but they're not.
He's now in the Netherlands. He's warning that the Taliban will commit atrocities as they consolidate power.
It is started already. We have some reports from some human rights activists that they'll start killing Hazara men. This is genocide.
The Hazara are the third largest minority group in Afghanistan and have faced repeated persecution under the Taliban. According to Amnesty International, Taliban militants massacred several Hazara men in July. In its first press conferences, the Taliban portrayed a moderate image and had conciliatory messaging. Husseini said any idea they will behave differently now is wishful thinking.
I saw them that they're not changed. They are really, really worst, right? I understand that. When they forced virgin girls in the villages, faraway villages, to marry the fighters from the other side of border, from Pakistan.
On Tuesday, the top UN human rights official said she had received credible reports of summary executions of civilians committed by the Taliban. Husseini is concerned the Taliban will promote their ideology abroad.
It's not something that they stay there. They start funding other groups or other activities in the world. You won't be, safe in Den Haag or Paris or, DC or anywhere else.
He said after the air campaign is over, the international community should lobby the group to let Afghans wanting to flee leave peacefully across the country's land borders. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
To other news now. An award-winning BBC radio presenter died due to complications caused by the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, according to a coroner's report. Lisa Shaw, a well-known presenter for BBC Newcastle, died in May. It was just over 3 weeks after she had her first dose of the jab. The 44-year-old started to complain of a headache a few days after receiving the vaccine and was diagnosed with a blood clot. She received specialist treatment and part of her skull was cut away to relieve pressure. But it was unsuccessful and she died on the 21st of May. Newcastle's senior coroner concluded she died due to complications caused by the vaccine. Still to come, we meet the curator of a national exhibition celebrating the life, genius and legacy of one of the greatest carvers in British history. There's that and more after the break. The German city of Hamburg has launched a pilot scheme that excludes anyone unvaccinated from its venues. A negative test is also not enough to get you in. From this Saturday, cinemas, restaurants, hotels, theatres and other venues in the city can open up without any COVID-19 restrictions. As a condition, venues must agree to only let in vaccinated and recovered persons. This means those with a negative test will be barred from entering. Opposition parties in the city council are calling it a compulsory vaccination through the back door. The mayor has argued that vaccinated people do not play a significant role in new infections. In the rest of Germany, negative tests are accepted to access venues, and other measures like mask wearing remains in place. To Italy now, which requires indoor diners to have a Green Pass vaccination certificate. With business on and off for over 17 months, restaurant owners are struggling with the requirements of the new system. NTD's Joanne Robson has the details.
In central Rome, signs at a restaurant entrance remind diners that a green pass is required. A green pass can be obtained with a vaccination dose, a positive diagnosis of COVID-19 in the past 6 months, or a negative test.
We ask if they have it, to let them understand that if they have the green pass, then they can eat inside, but if not, obviously, we can't let them in because we respect the rules.
The pandemic has brought about many requirements for restaurants. First, there were separators between tables spread 1 metre apart. Then there were temperature readings, gel dispensers and face masks. Now there's the green pass. This restaurant owner says he won't interrogate customers. He risks being fined £850 and 10 days of closure.
Personally for me, and maybe I shouldn't even say this in front of a camera, it's enough to ask if the customer has a green pass. I trust people, and then I let them in. Then again, there are only a few customers without the green pass, so the problem doesn't even exist.
For customers sitting outside, a pass is not required. For those who sit indoors, masks are required when they are not eating. One diner says he doesn't mind the requirements.
I don't want to transfer somebody else, even if it's painful this one here. But you need to think about the others more than yourself too. So I don't have any problem with the mask at all, even the restaurant.
The green pass applies to those 12 or older, since children aren't eligible for a vaccine in Italy. It is currently required when entering museums, cinemas, gyms, theatres and indoor pools. From September 1st, the pass will be needed for boarding trains, planes, ships and intercity coaches. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
In France, the vaccine mandate has been extended from healthcare workers to other professions. But as a mandate deadline approaches, some military service members and firemen are speaking out. NTD's France correspondent David Vivez brings us this report from Paris.
In France, after September 15th, all healthcare workers who haven't gotten the vaccine will have their salaries suspended, or they may be dismissed. And they are not the only professionals who are facing a vaccine mandate. Over 200,000 French military personnel must be vaccinated before the same deadline. But some are reluctant to do so and are openly speaking out against the mandate. Alexandre Jouvin-Brunet is a former military intelligence officer and reservist. He says a vaccine mandate may not be justified. He's one of the service members calling on his colleagues to question their decision.
Here we see only 0.03% of people die from COVID-19. What we are looking at is a political agenda to push the vaccine. It's not a safety measure based on common sense and logic.
He said he found support from many colleagues who didn't want to get the shot and called on military leaders to question their decision to enforce the vaccine mandate for military personnel.
I'm calling on the military leaders and the chain of command. They bear the responsibility. They will put their name on the orders, and the orders carried out by the chain of command will engage the responsibility of officers, whatever the rank. So if there are side effects for the troops, the officers might be responsible, maybe even guilty if anything happens.
In addition to healthcare workers and service members, firemen will also be forced to get the vaccine and will share the same fate if they refuse it, meaning a suspended salary or being forbidden to go to work. In order to claim their right not to take the vaccine, 672 firemen addressed the European Court of Human Rights to cancel the mandate. The firemen called for the respect of their privacy, but the court dismissed their appeal on Wednesday. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
A Czech runner died from his injuries after falling during the ultra trail du Mont Blanc mountain race, the organizers said on Wednesday. NTD's Cos Temenes has more on this.
A Czech runner died this week along one of the most difficult ultramarathon courses in the world, the French-hosted Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc. The race's director, Isabelle Poletti, confirmed the fatal accident on Wednesday.
Last night at 12:25 a.m., the UTMB Mont Blanc Race Committee was informed that the TDS runner had a serious accident on the descent of the Passeur de Poilogne. I confirm that he is Czech runner, and out of respect for his family, we will preserve his name. Despite all the care given to him, the runner succumbed to his injuries.
Les services de l'État. Mont Blanc is the highest mountain in the Alps and crosses borders in France, Italy and Switzerland. The Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc follows that peak along a 90-mile path and has an altitude gain of 30,000 feet. Every year, 1,600 runners take part in the race. It was cancelled last year due to the global health crisis. Costa Menes, NTD News.
Social media app TikTok is partnering with e-commerce giant Shopify. It seems Shopify is going to help power TikTok's e-commerce business. Here's NTD's John Robson with more.
TikTok users can soon buy products directly through short videos on the app. That could pose a threat for Facebook. Until now, shopping was only possible through ads. In a deal with Shopify, TikTok will soon let businesses add a shopping tab on their profiles. This will create something like a mini storefront that links directly to checkout at their online store. The video app hopes to replicate the success of Douyin, its twin app for the Chinese market. TikTok is working with merchants in the UK to find ways they can sell products to millions of users directly. ByteDance is the company that owns both Douyin and TikTok and is based in Beijing. Chinese security laws require companies to cooperate with intelligence agencies when asked to. And critics say the app could be used as a spying tool for the Chinese Communist Party. On top of that, they say users' content could be censored when deemed politically sensitive. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
A national exhibition celebrates the work of one of the greatest carvers in British history. It shows how his work continues to inspire carvers today. NTD's Neil Wardre meets with the curator of the exhibition.
The exhibition celebrating the life, genius and legacy of Grinling Gibbons launched at Bonhams in London. The curator and director of the Grinling Gibbons Society introduces the 17th century master woodcarver and sculptor on the 300th anniversary of his death.
This is a man who has played a hugely important part in British art history, and therefore we wanted to commemorate his life and legacy through a year-long programme of events and an exhibition.
Gibbons was born to English parents in the port of Rotterdam in 1648, where highly skilled carvers were called upon to create the elaborate decorations for the ships. New research suggests he was apprenticed to a local family of sculptors. He came to England at the age of 19.
Britain had a tradition of carving. It tended to be in oak. It also tended to be generally more flat, less lively, and certainly without the realism that Gibbons brought to carving. So when you then compare it against a piece such as the Kirtlington panel behind us, you then get to see what makes his work so special, because it's lifelike, it's full of realism, it's dramatic, it's quite fun actually, and it brought carving right to the fore as an artwork in its own right, rather than just a sort of a backdrop.
Although Gibbons is primarily famous for his work with soft, fine-grained limewood, his workshop also produced work in stone and bronze. At the height of his career, he employed as many as 50 assistants. Another of the pieces on display is from a church overlooking the Tower of London.
So this is the front cover from All Hallows by the Tower, and it's a fabulous example of how sculptural Gibbons's carving was. And it's very sculptural, and each element is made to be viewed and seen from whichever angle you are in the room. The cover is wonderfully still in use and hangs above the font where children today are still baptised at the church. And we see some of his famous fruit and flowers and foliage. They're very exuberant and cover the entire part of the cover. Incredible realism, and then between it you have these cherubs, these winged putti that really make this piece, and they're pointing upwards, and it brings together all his skills in this wonderful ecclesiastical commission.
Gibbons' work in St Paul's Cathedral is thought to be one of his greatest achievements.
it's an amazing installation right at the heart of St Paul's, and that's the choir. And you see in this wonderful engraving from the 18th century what that actually encompassed. And so you have the choir stalls, you have the organ casing, all of this carved by Gibbons and his workshop.
The rebuild of St Paul's, designed by Sir Christopher Wren, was required after the Great Fire of London in 1666.
Wren called on Britain's most important carver to then provide the enrichment for it. And what a triumph he created. The choir has these series of cherubs decorating the top of it. Each one is different and individual, and we're really fortunate for this exhibition to have 4 of those cherubs on display, showing how they soared above the viewer beneath and created this really angelic and also very dramatic space.
The exhibition will move from Bonhams to Compton Verney in Warwickshire, which will also display additional items of Gibbons' work.
A fabulous life-size horse from the Tower of London is going to be specially craned out and exhibited to show just how diverse Gibbons' work was. And the exhibition will be there for 4 months so that people have the maximum chance to come and see it and find out what is so special about Gibbons.
The master carver's work has reached afar, such as the Cosimo panel in Florence. His legacy lives on too in the work of artists inspired by him. Some of these pieces are also included in the exhibition. The Compton Verney exhibition begins on the 24th of September. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.